Roughly 2.8 billion people live in India and China. Just to put that into perspective, the next 20 most populated countries together barely reach 2.6 billion, and the rest of the planet adds up to only around 2 billion more. That contrast feels unreal, and it raises a big question. Why do these two Asian giants have so many people? Well, today on Fish Memoirs, we have the answer. Let's take a closer look at China, a country stretching from the Himalayas in the west all the way to the shores of the East China Sea, and India bordered by Pakistan to the west, China and Nepal to the north, and Bangladesh and Myanmar to the east. It always surprises us how many people live in these two countries. But here's the interesting thing. India and China haven't really grown faster than the rest of the world. The key difference is that they started with a much bigger base. Think of it like a savings account. If the interest rate is 10% and you deposit $10, you end up with 11. But if you start with $100, you finish with 110. Same percentage, way more gain. That's exactly what happened with population. With more people to begin with, India and China naturally added more people during global population booms. So the real question isn't why India and China are so populated today. It's why they were already packed with people long before the world's population took off. To understand that, we need to look at a series of factors that slowly shaped this reality over thousands of years. Population growth has always been tied to one thing above all: food. A large population can only exist if there's a steady supply of what people eat. And in this department, India and China hit the geographical jackpot. Fertile land and fresh water are the foundation of all great civilizations, and both countries have plenty of it. Huge river systems such as the Ganges, the Yangtze, and the Yellow River allow agriculture to flourish and feed millions. In Asia, especially in the south and the east, fertile plains and mild climates make it possible to farm throughout the year. That agricultural superpower is one of the main reasons why Asia has been the most densely populated region on Earth for millennia. Another crucial factor is that agriculture itself was born here. The domestication of plants and animals happened largely in this region. Thousands of years ago, the first farming civilizations emerged in Asia, and that gave their people a massive head start. When a society can regularly provide food, it no longer just survives, it expands, it grows, it becomes powerful, and size matters too. Countries like Pakistan or Bangladesh may be extremely dense, but they simply don't have the land to reach India's and China's sheer numbers. These two giants have both the population and the space to hold them. Their enormous territories allow for more farmland, more cities, more natural resources, and ultimately more people. Despite all this, China went through one of the most devastating tragedies in demographic history. The Great Leap Forward, an economic and social campaign led by Mao Zedong in the mid-20th century, resulted in one of the deadliest famines ever recorded, with estimates ranging from 15 to 45 million deaths. And later, the one-child policy, implemented from 1980 to 2015, severely limited China's population growth for decades, drastically reducing the birth rate. In India, British colonization and the partition of the country in 1947, which split the territory between India and Pakistan, triggered massive population displacement and brutal violence between the two sides, leaving a deep demographic impact. Famines such as the Bengal famine of 1943, which took the lives of around 3 million people, also marked India's population history in a painful way. On top of this, epidemics like the bubonic plague and the Spanish flu, as well as countless internal and external wars throughout the centuries, reduced the population at different points in time. These events, together with the ongoing processes of urbanization and modernization, have changed the patterns of birth and mortality in both countries. And yet, none of this has stopped these two Asian giants from remaining at the top of the global population rankings. To give you an idea, today 1 out of every 3 people on Earth lives in India or China, and for over 100 years, China was the most populated country in the world. But in 2023, India began to take that title away. So, what changed? The demographic trends of China and India are now telling two very different stories. On one side, China is experiencing a decline in its population, driven by both an aging society and a very low birth rate. In 2022, China's population dropped for the first time in more than 60 years. This decline is partly the consequence of decades of strict birth control policies. The one-child policy eventually shifted to a 2-child limit, and since 2021, up to 3 children are allowed. But even with this flexibility, the cultural and social changes in China have led many women to have fewer children and to have them later in life. According to the Pew Research Center, China's fertility rate is only 1.3 children per woman, far below the 2.1 replacement threshold. India, on the other hand, is experiencing a very different demographic reality. Throughout much of the 20th century, the country went through a population explosion, with growth rates reaching 2.3% per year. Although the pace has slowed down, the population is still increasing, and projections show that this growth will continue at least until 2060. This is due to what is known as population momentum, a phenomenon that happens when a young and numerous population keeps pushing growth upward even as birth rates decline. In India, the fertility rate has also dropped, going from 3.4 children per woman in 1992 to 2.1 in 2020, which suggests that the country is moving toward demographic stabilization. However, with a much larger population of young people in reproductive age, the total number of births remains high. This is the key reason why India is surpassing China as the most populated country in the world. In short, China is facing population aging and a shrinking workforce, while India prepares to take advantage of its demographic strength. Of course, India must also manage that growth and ensure the well-being of its enormous population. And that's it for today's video. What do you think? Has globalization accelerated or slowed down population growth in China and India? And would you rather live in a densely populated country like India or China, or in a smaller country with fewer people? You know the drill. If you enjoyed the story, give it a like, hit subscribe, and dive in for the next one.